The message is this: members of the national media, be a media of the people.
It is time to challenge the secular monopoly. Stop apologizing for believing in absolutes. Rise to the occasion and defend what you know to be the truth. That's what No Apologies is all about.
Welcome to the Common Sense Radio Revolution.
No Apologies with Tristan Emmanuel.
If you're your basic average day layman right now, what do they need to know?
They have to get out of debt, and they have to buy gold and silver, preferably gold. Because gold is a financial asset of the first rank. And I think we're going to go back to remonetizing gold, even if it's only at the central bank level. And gold's going to become a premier reserve asset. You can't really trust paper.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that this week is going to be telling. What did you mean by that?
We're going to have a bunch of credit default swaps settle this week. Lehman Brothers is going to settle at the end of the month. A lot of companies wrote, essentially, I guess you could term it, insurance policies against Lehman Brothers in case of a default, or paper, other sort of events that could go wrong with Lehman Brothers. There's going to be trillions of dollars associated with that. The derivatives market right now is over $500 trillion in size. Lehman's probably good for 10 or 12 trillion of that, and there's no way that can be paid. That's why you have all this monetization behind the scenes with the Fed injecting huge amounts of liquidity into the system. By now they had an emergency coordinated interest rate cut today because the situation behind the scenes is exploding and no one wants to talk about it.
In the U.S., there's been a lot of bank foreclosures. A lot of people are, they're finding out their banks don't exist.
Yeah.
Their money is held up. And now apparently they have some kind of insurance, $100,000.
They moved to $250 now.
Okay. Canadians, do they have the same concern?
Canadians shouldn't have the same concerns.
And why is that?
Well, I don't think our banks are in as much trouble now. I think maybe the banks lie about what they have. But are they in the same kind of trouble? No. I don't think they were as aggressive. CDIC here, Canadian Deposit Insurance Corp, $100,000, and that used to be $60. A few years ago, it moved up to $100. In the States, the FDIC was $100, and last week it was moved to $250. But I think there's something curious about that. I think that $250,000 is not ongoing. I think it's only good for 2 years. I have to check that out again. That's not an ongoing guarantee. It's only good for 2 years. I have to look at that again, though.
All right. Would you advise someone who doesn't have a lot of liquidity, like a lot of cash on hand savings, to use credit to go buy gold?
That people have talked about that. I would say no.
Okay, why is that?
Because now you're leveraged to one event, to one particular event taking place. I would think if you had, let's say, if you had no debt, but not in much way of assets, really your net worth is going to be higher than most people out there. And so that's worth something. Like your signature on a piece of paper is actually worth something.
Right.
So try to maybe keep that clean. I'm sort of averse against going into debt for this.
Okay. Last question. Time frame. How long do you figure this shakedown is going to happen?
Well, when gold moves, if you're looking at it from an upside perspective, capital gain perspective, when gold moves, it goes. Same with silver. There's really no holding it back once it decides to move. But I think we're seeing events accelerate here because the behind-the-scenes situation is just so terrible that by Christmas you could see an incredible shakeout. Between now, here we are, still in the first half of October. Between now and Christmas, you could see just blood in the streets.
Right.
Financially.
And when that happens, what do you figure? Is this a 2-3 year cycle till we recover?
What happens is we'll have a wipeout, and then we'll just muddle along the bottom for decades.
Really?
This just happened to Japan too. In Japan, if you remember, 1988, the Nikkei was 38,000 or 39,000. Right? Today it's under 10. So they've lost 2 decades. They didn't really do anything. And that's because they refused to deal with their problems. They basically had an asset collapse before it happened now. And it just takes forever to get out of it. Like another good example, just from a North American perspective. look at the 1929 crash. From the high, from the high, which was also 29, to when the Dow Jones Industrial Average eventually recovered. I think it was 1954. So from 1929, it took from 1929 to 1954 just to recover the 29 high. And the Dow went from, if I'm not mistaken, 390 to like 4 years later to 42. Imagine 390 to 42. Okay, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. What's that? Like not much more than a little better than a tenth.
Okay.
Now imagine that. So that would mean if you want to use the exact same metric, last year the Dow got to 14,000. So maybe the Dow, goes to like 1,800. So you could say goodbye. For like a lot of Americans can just say goodbye to their 401ks, their IRAs, their pension plans, and their pension plans are worse in the States than they are here. Here things are a little more safe. In the States, your pension plan might be entirely the stock of the company you work for. Imagine that. So if they go broke, there goes the pension too, and you might be 3 weeks away from retiring and just kiss it all goodbye. So things are much better here. Be grateful you live here.
Okay.
The message is this: members of the national media, be a media of the people.